So the first thing I'm going to cover real quick is the use of the Docker images that are available with the Docker images repo. So if you've not already on GitHub, there's a Docker images repo, and build images based on what this repository provides, and then that would support kind of the path that I'm going in this demo. Basically, you just run this command, you log in with your credentials to the Sitecore dev site, and it'll acquire the appropriate packages. It'll build all of the Docker images. One thing to keep in mind is that there are options to build different images based on the Windows Server version. Those need to be compatible with the version of Windows that you're running. Your laptop, for example, if it's running Windows version 1909, then you could sort of run everything. But if you're on a corporate network and you're still on 1809, then you need to make sure that you're building 1809 images or the LTSC 2019 images. There's an environment configuration that you can set which version the images should be run as. But all of that is in this Docker images repository, so I won't go into it any further than that. So at this point, it assumes that I have already done the build and that I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the next step. So the next step is working with Node. So what I've done is I've created a Docker file that allows me to install Node on a Windows server. Now, why would I do that and not perhaps use one of the existing Node images? That's going to be because right now, for just mainstream support with Linux and Windows containers side by side, it's just not there yet. So I wanted to keep things simple for someone who might be watching this video and wants to just pick this up and run with it. So I'm going to use the same image, Windows Server image, that's being used by the Docker images repository for all the Sitecore images. In this particular case, I'm using Server Core 1909, and I'm setting Windows PowerShell as the shell for this Docker file. One very important detail is if you're going to use the SXA CLI, the current version for at the time of this video is, I believe, 1.0.1, and that version relies on Gulp 3.9. 3.9 of Gulp is only compatible with Node 11. So if you just say, hey, I want to go install the SXA CLI and give it a try, installing Node 12 won't work. And I've already spoken with the SXA team about that. I think it's on the roadmap to upgrade it, but for today, it's not the case. And so I thought there's a lot of value in having a node running within a container, because then I don't have to worry about the different version problems that come. So if you had 12 on your machine and you're wanting to try out the SXA CLI, what do? Do you install both? Do you uninstall one, or do you change environment variables? It just gets messy. So in the container, in the image build process, Node 11 will be running. So I'm basically downloading it into the downloads folder within the container. I'm installing it, deleting the old file, and then running the installation for Node Package Manager to install Gulp CLI and Gulp globally, as well as this probably isn't absolutely necessary, but the Node npm check updates. I thought that was a fairly useful module that will allow you to see if any of your Gulp packages are out of date. Keep in mind that whatever is run within this Docker file is what's baked into the image. So it can be out of date. And you can run whatever you want while it's running, but when you tear it down and you run a new image into you run the image in a new container, all of those changes are lost. So be aware of that. And then finally, I'm registering the SXA CLI. So now that I've built this image on my machine, which is something as simple as, I think it's Docker build-t, and then you would name it, whatever you want. So in this case, you could name it 1115, and then the current directory. Now I've already built it, and so I don't want to waste all your time showing you that process. But if we look at all of the available images, you'll see that I have a node image that's compatible with my OS using node 1115. So I've taken that, and now I can go into my compose file, my Docker compose file, and I've essentially taken an existing one from the repository, and I've removed the content delivery service, and I've added a new one for my node image. So the name that we just looked up here, node, and then the tag. And just for consistency, in this Docker file, I'm using the Windows Server Core variable, and that is contained within this env file. So this is consistent with how things are set up in the Docker images repository. So you'll see that I'm running a Sitecore 9.3 using 1909. Yep. So all of those passwords and things are default, so no concerns there. Now, in addition to that, I have also set up a few other interesting things. One, for example, is I've stated that I want ping to run so that this node image doesn't just exit out. And why would that be important? Well, I want node to start up, or I want it to be available, and I'm going to have Gulp running, but I don't want the server to just shut down. And so there's probably a better, different thing that you can do with this. And so I'm just going to leave it at that, and you can explore and tell me what I did wrong. The second thing is volumes. So what we're going to want is a theme folder on my workstation on the host that maps to the C drive theme directory on the node image that's running. And why that's valuable is I don't want every time I start the container up to have to download all of these things again. So having it persisted to a volume is going to help with that, right? So so we've got a relative path, which is relative to the Docker file theme, and inside that container is going to be this guy right here. So let's give this a try. And what I hope will happen is all of the containers are going to be running. The reason why you see docker-node is because of the folder that I'm running it from. Perhaps that's a way that Docker can keep those unique. And then the names after that with a 1 indicate the services that have been defined. So if we look here, we see that Docker node is running, Solar, SQL, and so forth. So I'm going to just double check that I can log in to Sitecore. Otherwise, it'll waste your time.
Michael, I can help you to fix it.
Okay, how can I fix it?
If you open your YAML file.
This one?
Yes. Basically a CM.
Yeah.
You see, you have. Just check my message on the public chat.
Okay.
That's the old syntax. It should be Sitecore license path.
Okay, you're saying to change it to this path?
Yeah, exactly. Just replace what I see. This one line that I sent, just replace this, the whole thing.
That one?
No, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I have never done this step before, so thank you. Okay, so let me shut it down.
And you're missing the volume. You also need the volume.
Thank you again. Look at that, pair programming at its finest.
Yeah, now it should work. Also bear in mind that for CM and CD, it's Sitecore license location. It's a full path to the file. And for Xconnect and other services, it's just the path to directory.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
So in this demo, I have opted for no CD, and it's XM only, just for simplicity's sake. But if you were doing more running containers, then certainly I would heed that advice. Okay, so let's try again real quick to see if Sitecore is up and running and you've saved the day. All right, I'm going to assume for a moment that it is working, and so I want to repeat the steps from a moment ago. So I've run this. I want to connect to my CM. I'm going to change to the appropriate directory. I'm going to rename this file and then exit. Okay, this is a good sign because it's still running. And then I'm going to connect to my node instance. I'm going to change to the theme directory. I'm going to register my service URL. Yeah, go team. You're a hero. Love it. Okay. Hopefully that's going to be a good thing for the rest of the demo. Okay, so now the next step is I'm going to just run this wizard again. And no, I'll leave it the same. I want to enable it. And since this piece is working, what I expect to see is when I go into the container, then I will see these folders get created. Now, here's an interesting step. These are theme modules that you can have installed from SXA. I just choose the default options, and it's going to download these files. Eventually, you're going to see a theme 1 directory in here, and everything gets downloaded into that. So I'm going to try to give as much detail up front before the Zoom runs out of time. But the theme gets created. All the node module files are going to be downloaded into the appropriate directories. The critical step that I've mentioned before is that you actually need to run the npm install in order for those files, all the files, to get downloaded correctly. Otherwise, it just nothing really valuable happens for you. Okay, so we're in here. We look in the theme. So when I ran it previously yesterday, I ended up with this custom directory for the demo theme 4. Now that I've left the default setting there, you'll see that it put custom theme path as was the sample path in the console, and then it created the theme within Sitecore. So here, no, I don't want to set up the URL because it's already set up, and I'm going to do all the default settings. These are kind of your standard questions. Okay, so now you'll see that in this container, I need to switch over to the theme 1 directory. I need to make the scripts folder, and then I'm going to run the Gulp commands. And just so that you know, this isn't smoke and mirrors. So I've got scripts that's empty, node modules, it's practically empty. And this is going to be another valuable reason why you want to have a volume, because you want all of these modules to be dropped into the appropriate directory. You don't want to have to like run this every single time that you're going to start working, because kind of be unexpected results with what packages get downloaded. Maybe one day it gets removed from npm and you're like, now what do I do? So you want to make sure that they're here. But you know, one thing that I thought was really valuable in setting this up is that the image has the CLI baked into it. So I don't have to be so concerned about that being unavailable. Like, it's all there, it's all local, and I can do my work, and I don't have to keep trying to download it. Now, the only time that you need to rebuild this image is if and when SXA rolls out a new version of the CLI. And I would assume that it would be like, a minor release. So bug fixes, we got rid of a patch, or sorry, we got rid of a package that had some sort of security problem. So I could see that happening between now and the next release of Sitecore. I don't expect to see a 2.0 between now and then, but just be aware that you might need to rebuild the image, which is relatively a trivial task to perform. Okay, let's double check. So here we've got a couple other things that have, I think, one folder that's appeared. Any other questions for what I've demoed so far? Is everyone overwhelmed? Let me double check the chat. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so we've got no other chat messages. So this is such a slow process. So just be mindful of that when you're trying to do this, perhaps in an automated fashion. That these files have to be downloaded, and ideally you would have them cached in some way. So once this is complete, the watcher will start up. So this chain of commands, do note that I'm running it in a PowerShell shell, and so using the semicolon is necessary. You may see other examples where they use there's like the double and symbol. Well, that wouldn't really apply in the case of a PowerShell console. All right, we're almost there. All right, so so the next step we're going to do is we're going to, let's see, I'll open up another VS Code. Actually, it would have been better to do this. Open Visual Studio. Sorry.
You're going to regret that.
Yeah, I know. Like, oh, no. Shut down. Okay, so so I do it from here. Open folder. And we'll say 1. Oh, I never actually had this happen before. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got this folder open. Generally, if I was running the terminal from within VS Code and I wanted to start up a Gulp watcher, I would do it from within here. But I have the benefit of having that all run actually within this instance of VS Code. So the fact that it's in 2 different places isn't really an issue. I could have not run this last step and then opened up the window with the one I wanted and used that particular terminal. You could have also just had a secondary PowerShell console and run it from here and then go and hide it. Do whatever you want. All we need is the watcher to be running. It doesn't really matter about the editor in that case. Okay, so now we can see that the watcher is running, and I'm going to now create a file under scripts. And so you can see that upload was successful. If I did something like console log go team, you'll see an error. These are linting errors saying that, hey, you can't put anything that has a console log message. So if you've seen the screenshot, these are actually good error messages that you want. You could do something else like and then you could basically do whatever else you want here. So even in this case, it's smart enough to know that it's wrapped in some extra code. But it still uploads. And then if I go into Sitecore You see the scripts there. So no smoke and mirrors in this demo. As a team, we got it working. I appreciate your help.